Hey people. Hopefully y'all can hear me. I have my headphones in. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone is doing well. We are going to jump right into our content. So of course, before we start, always got to do the housekeeping. My name's Monique. I am the community health coordinator, pronouns she, her, hers. And this is Real Talk DC, program of Whitman-Walker Health. So, gonna run through our just our little spiel that I always run through every Wednesday. Whitman-Walker Health's Community Health Department has expanded its outreach efforts to the social media platform. We cover various topics about HIV, STI, sexual health practices, access to care, social determinant of health, and general public health interventions. The next series of outreach sessions will focus on, of course, the current pandemic, COVID-19, and ways to manage your sexual, personal, and mental health. The community health team is here to educate and support you. Great. So I just said that the next few sessions will focus on the current pandemic. However, we are not focusing on that today. We are going to focus on some positivity. It's March. March kicks off the anticipation of spring. Even though this winter hasn't been bad, it's been some cold days, but we are ready for spring. The sun is setting later. Look, it's still bright outside behind me at 4:32. A few weeks ago, it would be getting dark already by this time. Sun actually sets around 6 o'clock now, and won't set before 6 p.m. again until November. So we got us a little while. Daylight saving, because there's no S at the end, ends in 13 days, and the spring solstice, starts in 19 days. But more importantly about March, it is Women's History Month. Women have fought tooth and nail for the respect that we so rightfully deserve, and we have made significant strides throughout history to present day, and it's time to celebrate some of those accomplishments, and I'm doing that by sharing some facts. So, let's get into it. So, first 3 facts are about the same thing, just the progression of it. So the first women history, oh my gosh, tongue-tied today. The first Women's History Day was held in 1909, February 28th, 1909, to be specific, marks the first Women's History Day in New York City. It commemorated the 1-year anniversary of the garment workers' strike, when 15,000 women marched through Lower Manhattan. From 1909 to 1910, immigrant workers who worked in garment factories held a strike to protest their working conditions. Okay? Second fact, again related to the first, Women's History Day became Women's History Week in 1978. An education task force in Sonoma County, California, kicked off Women's History Week in 1978 on March 8th. So, we've got an anniversary coming up next week, actually. They wanted to draw attention to the fact that women's history wasn't really included in K through 12 school curriculum at the time. Fact 3, in 1987, it went from Women's History Week to Women's History Month. Women's organizations, including the National Women's History Alliance, campaign yearly to recognize Women's History Week. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter declared the week of March 8th Women's History Week across the country. But by 1986, 14 states had declared the entire month of March for women's history. The following year, in 1987, activists were successful, and they lobbied to Congress to declare the entire month of March Women's History Month over the entire country. All right, next fact. every Women's History Month has a theme, which Black History Month, which we just finished literally 2 days ago, also now has a theme. So every Black History Month will have a theme. Every Women's History Month has a theme. So the 2020 theme was Valiant Women of the Vote, and honored women from the original suffrage movement, as well as women who continued to struggle in the 20th and 21st centuries in recognition of the centennial of the 19th Amendment. Due to the pandemic, I thought we weren't going to mention it, but here we are. Due to the pandemic, this theme was extended into 2021 and renamed as Valiant Women of the Vote, Refusing to Be Silenced. The 2022 theme, which is now, is Women Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. This theme not only honors the tireless work of the National Women's History Alliance, this theme not only honors the tireless work of the caregivers and frontline workers of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also women of all backgrounds who have provided compassionate healing and hope for the betterment of patients, friends, and family. Hey, thanks for joining. Next fact in Women's History Month is kind of sad. Well, yeah, I'd say kind of sad. In this present day, the 19th Amendment didn't give all women the right to vote. So the 19th Amendment, which granted the women the right to vote, was signed into law on August 26th, 1920. But at the time, a number of other laws prohibited Native American women, Black women, Asian women, and Latinx women from voting, among others. It wasn't until 1924 that Native American women born in the United States were granted citizenship, allowing them to vote. But even after that, Native American women and women of color were prevented from voting by state laws, such as like poll taxes and literacy tests. We already know how that goes as well. Can I have... Sure. Soon as I finish this one little segment up, I will give it to you. So yes, it wasn't until 1965 when Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law that discriminatory tactics such as literacy tests were outlawed and all women can vote. So someone just asked me for my email address about a project for Howard. So my email address is M as in Monique, Campbell, spelled just like the soup, at Whitman, WHITMAN -Walker.org. So it's mcampbell at Whitman-Walker.org. Let me know if you got it. I can say it again for you. If anybody wants to reach out to me about anything, that is my email address. Of course, I am Monique Campbell, the Community Health Coordinator, and my email address is mcampbell at Whitman-Walker.org. All right, great. Next fact about Women's History Month. This one I actually was one of my facts from Black History Month, and it pops up again. Claudette Colvin. I talked about her last month, a few Wednesdays ago. She basically did what Rosa Parks did. Didn't give up her seat on a bus. Literally 9 months before that situation happened with Rosa Parks. But she didn't get much, notoriety from it. So Claudette Colvin refused to give up her bus seat 9 months before Rosa Parks did. Rosa Parks' contributions to the civil rights movement are undeniable, of course. But 9 months before, she refused to give up her seat on a bus for a white person in Montgomery, Alabama. Claudette, who was 15 at the time, did the exact same thing. She was arrested. The day she was arrested, Claudette Colvin The day she was arrested, she was actually learning about Black history at her school, and she's quoted saying, "My head was just too full of Black history. You know, the oppression that we went through. It felt like Sojourner Truth was on one side pushing me down and Harriet Tubman was on the other side pushing me down. I couldn't get up." She is quoted saying that. She was also one of the plaintiffs in Browder versus Gale, just found this out today, the case that ended up overturning bus segregation laws in Montgomery. So even though she didn't gain the notoriety like Rosa Parks did, she was one of the plaintiffs in that case that ended up overturning bus segregation laws in Montgomery. Thank you for joining. Next fact is about Geraldine Cobb, who was the first woman to pass astronaut testing in 1961. And even though she passed astronaut testing, she wasn't allowed to travel to space due to her gender. Always trying to hold us back. She testified on Capitol Hill in 1962, saying that we women pilots who want to be a part of the research and participation in space exploration are not trying to join a battle of the sexes. We see only a place in our nation's space future without discrimination. However, John Glenn, the first American to orbit Earth, opposed her. He said, "It's just a fact that women don't do certain," let me put this in quotations. "It's just a fact that women don't do certain things that men do, such as go to war and fly airplanes. The fact that women are not in this field is a fact of our social order." I'm using quotations because we already know that's not true. On to the next fact. About 20 years later, Sally Ride became the first woman who went into space. And she was the first lesbian astronaut. Sally Ride became the first woman in space in June 18, 1983, when she flew on the space shuttle, the Challenger. And it wasn't until her death that her obituary revealed that she was actually a lesbian. Next fact. Women couldn't get credit cards on their own until 1974. That's actually not that long ago. Until Congress passed the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in 1974, women couldn't get credit cards in their own name. They had to have a man come to co-sign with them. So, just trying to hold us down. Next fact. Women make up 27% of Congress. 145 women serve in the United States Congress out of 535 total members. Though the number of women representatives continues to rise, it's important to keep in mind that the United States population is 50.8% female, according to census data. Another fact, women outnumber men as they get older. That is crazy, ain't it? Very crazy. So women outnumber men as they get older. Women age 85 and older outnumber men about 2-1, according to census data from 2019. So that's not that long ago. That's about 4.2 million women to 2.4 men in the United States, which brings me to my next fact, which is like you can visibly see it if you walk on any college campus. You can visibly see this, that women are earning college degrees, more college degrees than men are, and women are also enrolled, at least for undergrad, because I didn't go as far as getting my master's. I only have my bachelor's. But even like in undergrad, when you walk into a classroom or a seminar room, like you can visibly see that there are usually more women in class than men. So women are outnumbering in earning post-secondary degrees, according to 2021 data from the Education Data Initiative, 59% of women continue their education after high school compared to 50% of men. And while you be like, oh, that's just 9%, 9% looks different when you're counting actual bodies. So, next fact, women make up to 14% of active duty military members. Next fact, for every dollar that a man makes, with that gap widening even more for women of color, according to the 2020 data. So that's like legit recent. That's as old as COVID, as long as COVID has been around. And that is from data by the National Women's Law Center. So still 82 cents for every dollar that a man makes. Next fact, while we are making less than the men, we make up 57.8% of the labor force. Nearly 1 million women returned to the workforce in 2021, just last year, almost double that of men. According to thanks for joining. According to the census, 3.3 million of all the jobs added to the economy went to women, while 3.1 million went to men. This should not overlook the jobs that women, in particular, women of color, have lost during the pandemic, when responsibilities such as childcare often fell on their shoulders. And we know that a lot of people, of course, lost their jobs during the pandemic for whatever reason, but for women especially, and women of color, it was very difficult for them to have to hold on to a job because of things like childcare, right? Like, I don't have childcare because of this pandemic, so I have to stay home with my child, which means I can't earn money. So, rounding this out with the last two facts, great facts. One, Aretha Franklin was the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Known as the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987. She's known for her rendition of Otis Redding's Respect, I know y'all know it, R-E-S-P-C-T, and songs of her own like You Make Me Feel. She was also involved in civil rights activism and performed at Barack Obama's inauguration in 2009. And last but certainly not least, y'all know I had to finish with her. I finished with her last month for Black History Month facts. Kamala Harris, despite how people feel, Kamala Harris is the first woman and woman of color vice president. After winning the 2020 elections with Joe Biden, Senator Kamala Harris is making history as the first woman, first Black woman, and first Asian American vice president in the U.S. history. So, like I said in the beginning, women have been fighting tooth and nail to gain the respect that we so rightfully deserve. And we have made tremendous strides. There's still tons of work to do, but we are making it, and we are making sure that we are seen, especially, of course, and I may be maybe a little bit biased, but especially, of course, women of color. We are definitely, I would say, the blueprint for many things that are happening in today's society, especially on social media. So again, like I said, a lot of work left to do, but we are definitely making sure that we are seen. So because it is Women's History Month, every Wednesday I will come to you with something new about women's history. I'll shout out some dope women that I know. If anybody wants to join me on that specific Wednesday to join me to shout out the dope women that they know in their life, just send me a request. I'm more than happy to add you in so you can shout them out. And yeah, that is all I have for you on this fine Wednesday. If you have any questions, you can always drop them in the comments, or once I post this video, you can drop it in the comments as well, and I will hit it up on the following Wednesday. That is all I have. Everybody have a great rest of their Wednesday. I think it's a little bit warm outside, maybe in the 60s. The weather's getting good, so get out and enjoy, exercise, get some fresh air if you can. Enjoy the rest of your week.